Yeah, okay. That could be a problem, I guess. Most people in and out, in and out. Thank God this is an easy chapter because the weather is so murky. Hi, Raven. Yes, yeah, thing.
Miss Archer's the
It's 6 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
I
No, the letter had 2 dates on it, so I just was
Oh,
the bottom had November 7th
no.
and the
Always
top had December 6th, so I didn't know which date.
the 6 at 6 p.m.
Mm,
And this weather, I don't know where it came from. What is this, a cold front?
okay. Well, the sun's out here now, but it was storming and the internet just keep cutting off.
Oh, let's see how it goes. Okay, so today's chapter is on company secretarial practice. Does anyone act in the capacity as a company secretary? Yes, no?
No, but I assist the company secretary on the management of a few companies.
Oh, okay. So you'll have an idea. So you're an assistant corporate secretary there.
Not in official capacity, but basically I do it and then they read it and sign it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you are the assistant. Would it be good is if you recognize it, so you can have that on your resume. You see what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it'll give more credibility when you try to apply for positions. It'll show that you've had years of experience in it. Because I see that a lot on person's resume that they would have been doing functions that fall under a different job description and they were never given a title for it. And so it works against you.
Yeah. But they tend to reserve those for the people with bigger titles behind their name.
Oh, not being an assistant. You think so? No.
Being on anything. Correct.
I agree with you. I've seen that too. All right, so a company secretary, or even if you are an assistant, sometimes you do the bulk of the work, is a person that's appointed by the board, and they are more or less like the right hand of the chairman in that capacity. So the company secretary has to be familiar with company law, whether that's IBC or a CAC company, because the company secretary has legal responsibilities. So they have to know the memo and arts of that company inside and out. They act as the intermediary between the board and senior management. So sometimes this person has a totally different role on a day-to-day basis. So they'll do whatever their regular job is along with being a company secretary. So they are the intermediary between the board and senior management and the board and the shareholders. And their role is very critical because it's the one that carries out all of the administrative duties. So in some organizations, especially the large ones, the CEO and the senior management normally get their advice from the corporate secretary. Because the corporate secretary, when she's finished taking the minutes in a meeting, she's the one who goes out and sends an email out to say, these are the matters that were approved, or these matters were not approved, and here's what the board is looking for at the next meeting. So they are like the advisor. So the secretary advised the board themselves on how they should conduct themselves in the meeting. The corporate secretary also prepares the preliminary documents for the chairman, for the board to actually carry out a review of itself. The board also will prepare the preliminary documents for each of the board members under the instruction of the chairman to do a review of the skill sets of the board to see if they're meeting the objectives of the board, and they will be able to, I guess, carry out the strategy of the board, because everything is based on the composition of the board. The company secretary would also help with issuing any corporate governance principles. So normally the corporate secretary has a legal background or a paralegal background. And of course, they're the ones that actually make sure that the practices that the company carries out are in line with the shareholders' wishes, the investors' wishes, also what's in the interest of the employees.
Bergen Forest, Germany, October 1944. The terrible battle raged in this dense dark pine forest on the German-Belgian border. The Americans soon christened the battle.
Hold on. Let me tell them it's coming through.
Died in the tangled woods, killed by an implacable and capable enemy fighting on his own soil. What had begun in September 1944 with optimism for an early end to the war was by October an attritional struggle in the dark forest. The Americans,
I sent a note to tell him mute his mic.
The Allies had received their first intimation that breaking through the Siegfried line into Germany was not going to be walkover. In September to October 1944, for the ancient city of Aachen. Everyone assumed that the shattered German army had lost the battle of Normandy in the summer and had retreated back to Germany, would remain shattered and easy meat for the advancing US, British, Canadian, and French armies. But events at Aachen had proved wrong. Here, the cut-off German force of 5,000 men had fought tenaciously.
What is happening here?
Against American forces for the first time on German soil.
I cut him off completely. I wonder if that's going to work. You think we'll check the recording?
I don't know. It still shows it as recording on my end.
Okay.
Who's the host?
That's Miguel.
Hmm.
I muted his mic. So
I don't think it should.
hopefully not. Let's go. Because that was loud. That's probably another class in session. So in care of the role of a corporate, that you never done it, but the purpose of the board meeting, you have to and really assess effectiveness. So you see when they say they're having their biannual strategic meeting, that's when the board of directors and all senior management would have theirs. They would actually look to see where they are in trying to achieve the strategy that has been set out for the year and what they're going to do in order to meet their goals for year end. Within the strategy, they need to establish and maintain clear policy on relevant operational issues. So what they look at is, what are the policies that we have now? And what policies do we need to approve? That's for the board. For management is, which policies do we need to write or amend or review in order to meet our objectives? Remember that the policies and procedures also have to be in line with your operational issues. So if you have an issue that comes up and you don't have a policy that covers it, then senior management has to write a policy and then present that policy to the board for approval. They need to consider and enable successful planning throughout the organization. And that means that every department head should have a succession plan in place. And they should also be monitoring their budget. And if they have targets, they have to be able to report as to where they are in terms of attaining their targets. They have the board. Another purpose of the board is to gain external input and collaboration for executive decisions. So that's why you see on every board now, there is always an independent non-executive director. And their role is to actually bring to the table things that are happening on the outside of the organization and talk about how it will impact their business now or in the future. The next purpose of the board meeting is to ensure that the company effects all necessary procedure and compliance items across the range of health and safety issues. And it doesn't matter which sector that they are in, because the Health and Safety Act governs all companies. And so when the board meets, compliance and HR has to confirm that they are certain that the company is meeting all of its compliance, all of its regulatory, and also the Health and Safety Act. And Health and Safety Act is talking about right now would be COVID, but is also talking about an event of a hurricane. Is also talking about asset inventory control. Because all of that is a part of health and safety. You don't want your employees to sit in a chair and the chair collapses, because either it was accounts or it was maintenance falling under administration who did not follow the policy, which states that every 3 to 5 years, certain equipment have to be replaced or checked or oiled or whatever maintenance is required. Same thing with the elevators. All of those is a part of your health and safety. So a board depends on its operation, can actually constitute subcommittees, and the subcommittees consist of 3 to 5 members of the board. In some instances, it's just one, and they would meet 3 to 4 times a year. And the normal ones that are normally constituted is an audit committee and a remuneration committee. In some instances, there is a compliance committee. So as best practice, the main concerns are the constitution of the committee, the membership, attendance, the frequency, the authority, the responsibilities, and the reporting procedures. And normally on these subcommittees, you would normally appoint the director who has the requisite skills for the area. So Danielle, are you on any subcommittees?
Because they're all intercompany, there are no subcommittees other than the committee for the main operational company. So it's an operational company and a bunch of subsidiaries. And so the main operational companies have like a compliance committee, but they don't have a bunch of subcommittees. They have like an executive committee and a compliance committee. There's an HR committee, but all of those are for the operational functions. I only deal with the subsidiaries that do a lot of asset management.
Okay. If you go in I guess if you're a corporate secretary or assistant corporate secretary in a bigger corporation, you would see subcommittees from all areas. And normally those subcommittees have a charter from the board, which sets out these same criteria here. The constitution is membership, the frequency of the meeting, the authority, their responsibilities, and how do they report back to the board. So the role of the board and the purpose of board meetings is one is the right strategy, ensuring that the right strategy is in place and that it is being executed. And it's also ensuring that there is a good process in place for developing and monitoring strategy. Then you have to make sure that you have the right resources, making sure that there are the appropriate resources in place to fit within the agreed strategy. And the most important of these are people and money. And that's why, you know, sometimes when organizations, sometimes mid-year, they would change certain key persons. That's when you look at the strategy to see where the company is now. They can make a decision that the person, whoever the person is, whether it's the CFO or the CEO, they could say that this person is not achieving our objectives. They're not implementing the strategy that the board has put in place. And then they make a decision either to give the person another chance or to let the person go. Next one is the keep out of jail. Just mean that the board needs to ensure that. What happened, Danielle? Oh, that's Lisa.
That's me, sorry.
That the board needs to ensure that the company complies with the appropriate laws and regulations relating to its industry and location. Great directors, whether executive or non-executive, have the following characteristics. And one is great judgment, superb interpersonal skills, and finely tuned antenna. And that finely tuned antenna means that they are able to hear what's going on internally and externally. Because you cannot run an organization without being able to feel the culture in the organization. Because if a culture is not a part of your strategy, then you'll be internally, they'll be working against what you're trying to obtain in order to fulfill the requirements for the shareholders. So composing a board of directors require team building with complementary skills and persons who can work together. Good chemistry in the composition of a board is vital, and there has to be a balance of perspectives in the team. And a board that becomes too comfortable with itself spells danger. There should be a mix of ages, sexes, and backgrounds. And that's how you build a healthy board. So less for the day, but even though we don't have the composition, we could look at the board appointments that were made when it was this week or last week. That was last week, eh?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. There was some appointments last week, but the list wasn't finalized.
Yeah, let's see.
There was something circulated last week on the OPM's website. And something, I saw something even on WhatsApp.
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to find it now on the internet. Because the composition of the board, okay, the first thing is this. The shareholders for these boards is the people of the Bahamas. They're going to be directed by the Office of the Prime Minister as to whatever strategy or direction that he wants these boards to go into. So the next thing we have to look at is whether the persons that they have selected as chairman is the right person. So let's take any one of them. I'm trying to find it. I know Wendy Craig was appointed. Was she appointed chairman of the airport? I can't remember.
I wasn't paying attention to the list in terms of who got appointed. I was paying attention to the list in terms of person that were appointed that ought not to be appointed.
Oh, well, okay, so just give us one of those then.
Without calling a name.
No, but the name,
Previous-
okay?
No, without calling a person's name. Previously, there was a list that went out where certain people were appointed to boards, and my conscience made me have to bring it to the attention to certain powers that be that have access to these persons who are responsible for appointing and saying, hey, you sure you want this person on this board on representing your government and my country when this person was just in court for stealing clients' money? When this person has several complaints against them at the Bar Council, when this person is in court for stealing people's land, when this person may be disbarred, this is not what you want. And this is not what I want for my country.
And
For
what
my
was the,
government. Well, I don't see the name on the list.
oh, wonderful. So take it from a corporate governance point of view.
By the way, I didn't find a list, but I found a Tribune article. I put it in the chats with the
Right.
first round of appointments, including the Airport Authority. Airport Authority, Paul Bevins.
I don't know.
There's a Pedro Rowell for the BPL, Quinton Lightborn for the Bahamas Development Bank or something, I believe. Those are what's up top of my head.
Yeah, corporation is right. And then it is, Pedro Roll is BPL. Barbara Cartwright is Bahamas Mortgage Corporation. Anthony Kiki Varacas is Bahamas Air. Devard Francis is Civil Aviation Authority. Daniel Johnson is Gaming Board. I don't know any of these people. Roderick
No.
Colebrook, Hotel
Unfortunate.
Licensing Board.
No, don't know them.
Ronald Duncombe, Nassau Flight Services. Paul McKenzie is National Insurance Board. Tavares Larode is Port Authority. Andrew Edwards is Public Hospitals Authority. And Leroy Major is Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation.
Okay.
You all know any of those people?
I know several.
No.
Hmm.
No. I only
several of
know.
them.
I only know the
Ronald-
former governor. That's it.
Ronald Duncombe is the one who ran in Kalani.
He is Nassau Flight Services.
He's a,
Mm.
Oh,
I think he has
I missed-
a car rental, like he does tourists,
Oh.
car rentals and was the tours and that type of thing, I believe was his day-to-day business.
Hmm.
Hotelier, from what I remember reading.
Well, James Turner Roll is the chairman of the Hotel Corporation. I don't know.
Who knows
that person.
he?
Who knows? Senator James Turner Roll.
I don't know these people.
Several of them are
No.
attorneys.
I see that. Attorney LaRoda, Attorney McKinsey, Attorney Francis, Attorney Edwards.
Mhm. The Larota and the Francis are partners, or they're partners. They have a law firm on Shirley Street. The other Larota is now in the office of Prime Minister. I forget his first name, but that Larota there is a different Larota. So
Miles LaRoda, I think he's the MP for some South Beach, Pinewood, something like that.
he and Mr. Francis are partners, law partners.
Oh.
I don't know
Or
about
any
that,
of these people in the fields in which they are going to act
Ah,
as chairman.
now you
No,
asking
they're
the right
not.
question.
No, they're not, because that firm is known as being a criminal firm. So what you doing in aviation?
Wasting people time. And the
So,
public's
so
money.
now you see why why that cycle is always repeated. The chairman of the board has to be the person who's going to lead the board of directors and fulfill the strategy. So if you don't know the business, how are you going to actually achieve the strategy that the prime minister has put forward for that organization?
They're not, and they're not going to listen to the people who are in the system and who are in aviation and say, hey, this is the right way to go. That is the right way to go. They're going to go at what's popular. They're not.
Exactly.
It's been my
Exactly.
experience. They don't do their research. They don't know the industry. They don't whatever. And my other experience is that they frustrate the life out of the permanent secretaries.
Secretaries, yes.
Who know the industry, who actually run the ministry, who know the staff, who have come up through the system, and they just put that cog in the wheel because let me get this money from this government, let me get the in, and let me help my people, so whatever, let me figure out how I could win off this personally, rather than be of service and do something different. So anyway, I'm gonna mute my mic now and sit on my hands. I'm up.
No, but your point is correct, because when you look at it, the chairman is the person who's going to drive that company, and along with the chief executive, and in a government ministry, that's the permanent secretary, along with the finance director, and then everybody else who sits on the board. So if the chairman, who is the head, doesn't know the business, then how is the company going to achieve the strategy? That's why I'm saying we keep going in a circle, round and around and around, and all of these ministries will never, ever be profitable, because the composition of the board is not the right one. Nothing against some of the persons personally, but what skill set do you bring to the board in order to make this board function the way it should?
They don't want the people with the skill sets. They don't want the people with the skill sets. They don't want the people with access to knowledge or access to industry. That's the problem. That's why we can always be on this treadmill.
Yeah, we're not getting off.
And added to that, this is the other reason why we experience brain drain, because we have people who can and who could tell you this is the way that we should operate this industry, but you don't want them. You don't want them because they're young. You don't want them because they're not going to be your puppet. You don't want them because you feel that their political persuasion is not yours. You don't want them because their ideology is not yours. And you don't want them simply because they want to serve, but they want to tell you the right way to that they can serve, but you don't want that. You want them to do what you say. That's the problem we have.
Look at Bahamas there. Anthony Kiki Varacas Sr.
Jesus Lord. Oh, I supposed to mute my mic. I mute my mic.
Isn't he about 70?
Again, it's kickback. I can unmute my mic. It's kickback political favor. Your family historically has done X, Y, and Z for this party. So we have to make sure that you are served or you are paid back, not you value, not you bring something of value with your 70 years of life and experience in this industry. No.
Yeah, that's all this is. Danny Johnson, the footman, is in charge of the gaming board. They don't connect.
Big sip of coffee.
You're laughing and this is serious. This is serious. This is very serious when you look at a board, its chairman, the composition of the board, the skill sets you're supposed to bring, the background you're supposed to bring. None of these organizations will grow.
Isn't he a doctor?
I just told you, foot doctor.
Yeah, so anyway. I'm sitting on my hands and my mouth.
Okay.
What board are you on, Donnie Johnson?
Gaming. No, this is serious, you know. This is serious.
It's political payback. Who he is, who his family is, and who he was married to.
Yes. But it's not helping the country.
Exactly.
Chairman of NIB, Attorney Philip McKinsey, who is he?
He is out of Mr. Davis's chambers. They call him Fish.
Oh, 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 we dead in the water before we even start.
He is a good civil attorney, but I don't know what he would bring to NIB. Lisa, sit on your hands and your mouth. Shut up.
Yeah. Power and Light is Mr. Pedro Roll.
I don't know him, but I know the name.
I don't know him. I don't know the name
Power
either.
Power and Light is in a category of almost that and water and sewage. Just blow up. They need to blow it up and build it over again.
But listen, in this day and age, when you turn on your television, right, you see in Europe everybody is moving towards not all of these stack of all this pollution. Everybody's using renewable energy, and they thought we have all of this dump, all of this stuff that keep catching a fire. Why can't we have someone who's going to be in charge of BPL, who's going to move us towards renewable energy and something that's safe?
Because the people that are connected to the powers that be that finance their campaigns have shares and own oil companies.
Well, that's true too.
The big money owns oil companies. The big money has shares in things that aren't beneficial for BEC to move towards renewable energy. Because then I don't have to pay for oil. I don't have to pay for this barge. I don't have to pay what all I need to do is put some machinery in place to convert God's sunlight into power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How they can benefit from that because they're manufacturing the parts or the machinery that does that. They're not trademarking the technology that produces this energy. So why? That's the problem. We have our own little oil tycoons in the Bahamas. The same way big oil wants to run America, and the five families that own the major industries want to run America. We have the same oligarch system here. Lisa, sure.
Should I carry on with my topic on the company secretary?
Yes.
Because okay, so this is a good example of how not to choose a chairman.
Agree. I could say something, but this
Yes.
Government is a board.
Mm-hmm.
And management of the country is like managing a company. So I'm trying not to speak my observations of how the country is being run and equated to companies. You know,
Yeah, but this is just like having a new shareholder buy an existing company.
right. I had the opportunity to sit on a board as a secretary for a company, and the company has the potential to make money and do well, but the people on the board and its members and shareholders aren't experienced businessmen. So they got confused when I say, hey, my job is this, and you should do that. You should be mindful of this. You should be mindful of that. You need to revamp your employee manual. You need to be cognizant of what the Employment Act says and what the Health and Safety at Work Act says, because Bahamians are becoming more litigious.
Mm-hmm.
I was told I was only there to link them up with people and make appointments. So I was like, oh, I out because you're confused. You think I'm a secretary, not a company secretary. So I'm a
Oh, but remember now, I told you before, a lot of people who sit on a board do not know what the roles mean in terms of the titles that they hold. They don't. They have no clue. None whatsoever. And not because
much movies.
And not because you put an attorney in charge means that he knows about how to run a company.
Exactly. Because I'm finding that attorneys are the worst employers,
Yeah.
the worst employers.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories how they don't pay their employees.
They don't pay their employees.
Speaks
They
to
don't-
them poorly.
They speak to them poorly. They don't do assessments or evaluations the way they should. And the staff is the one who do the work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. What you need, how I can help. Because, you know, as juniors, you're the ones who are doing all the work.
Right.
And sometimes your senior who and the partner they don't care. They just want it done. They want you to make them look good. So you can't go to them and say, hey, I'm stumped here. We have this personal injury matter and this is what happened. And the doctor's saying this and this, that, and next thing. I don't care. You deal with it. Just make sure you have it sorted out by the time you're ready for trial. I'm not a doctor. So now I have to reach out to my friends who are more experienced than me and say, hey, X, Y, and Z. Don't give me the answer. Just point me in the right direction. But when trial day comes and everything's laid out and things are done at this, that, and the next thing, at the end of the day, when they win that matter, when the judge hands down the ruling and they win that matter and they say, oh, send your bill. Lisa no longer did all the work.
Oh no, you too far down in the line. Too far.
You know, the junior no longer did all the work. And it's almost insulting because they try to tell you that you don't know anything. And I speak to the same thing happens to my friends who are accountants who work in the accounting firms and right up until it's time for evaluations and assessments, you was a good worker, what's this, that, and the next thing. But you don't know what you're doing.
But it's been like that from time.
Exactly.
And think about it. How long have they been trying to introduce continuing education requirements in the Bahamas for attorneys? They have it in the States.
They don't want it.
Why do you think that is?
Because the upper bar doesn't. The upper bar has realized that the amount of juniors coming into the profession and the way of their thinking and their training and their exposures academically and professionally is making some of them obsolete. So they don't want it. And as long as they control it, they will. Because they try to control who sits on the bar council. They try to control who gets elected to bar council. They decide in back rooms and back corners and whatever, which attorney is going to get disciplined when legitimate complaints are made against attorneys.
How much of them you think really could keep up with courses and sit them and pass them anymore?
None. A lot of them can't. A lot of them can't. You can imagine somebody who's practicing at 60, 70 years old, who's been practicing for 30, 40, 50 years, going and sitting in the classroom and saying, oh, let me teach you taught again, or this is the new position. They don't do that. That's why they have juniors.
Yeah. They give it all to the juniors to do.
The junior does all the work and the junior writes it in a way for them to process it. And then they stand up in court and say, oh, the locus classicus in this now is this. Smith v. Brown. But they don't know what Smith v. Brown say because junior has read the case, summarize the case and say, this is what the new law, common law position is. This is what this is what that is. They don't know what the facts of the case is. They don't know Mr. Brown. They don't know Mr. Smith. They don't care. They don't know what happened.
Sorry to take us off track. Let's just,
Yes.
It came in handy because the thing about it is that you can see now from the composition of the board, and that's just talking about these government ministries. Imagine what's happening in other areas. where people are being appointed and given these key positions and they do not understand their roles.
Didn't that happen with President Trump?
In what way?
I think he misunderstood his role as president.
What you mean in general?
In
Yes,
general, he misunderstood his role as president. You know,
yes, and
he tried to run the country through social media,
yes,
not
was-
educating himself on the facts and the issues and the roles and the role that America plays in the bigger economy of the world.
Mhm. He was trying to say he's running it like he runs his companies, but they all went into bankruptcy.
Okay, then. I don't know if anybody read any of the speeches other than or saw any of the speeches of the UN or COP26 other than Ms. Motley or Prime Minister Davis, but you should read. So if people have the opportunity, they should go on YouTube and listen to some of those speeches and see how America's decision not to participate in certain things affects other economies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's business.
But I think our prime minister, he gave a very good speech. If only he could do that all around.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But he's branding the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good for him. I commend him for that. He's branding the country. And I hope they continue it.
Yeah. But you can't be out there giving a one face and internally you have a different face.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yes. Because it's not going, a lot of those persons live here and it's gonna come out.
Exactly. And even if you looked at some of the comments under it, you had Bahamians commenting and some of it wasn't good. And I wish we would learn not to do that, because when you comment, the world reads your comments.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't internalize anything anymore. That's like people who always putting their life out on social media. But that's what it is. But it's business. He's branding the country and I commend them for that and their assessment of doing it. But if anybody listens to Parliament on Wednesday.
Go ahead.
Whew, that was juicy.
But when you realize that when Parliament meets, it's just like having a board meeting.
Yeah, exactly. That was a juicy board meeting. It was juicy to the point that the former prime minister got up and walked out.
Oh, I didn't hear any of it. Who led the meeting? Chester?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, Chester and Glennis, they bring up the rear.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting.
Yeah, but that's just how a board that's how a board's supposed to be. When the chairman isn't there, then the deputy chairman takes over. They call him sometimes the vice chairman. Yeah,
it was a lot of dirty laundry was aired.
Yeah, everything is always going back to this is what they didn't do.
Exactly.
But you have to realize that we the shareholders, we're saying to you, we're not interested in that. You're sitting in the chair now.
Exactly. But in their defense, they weren't trying to bring out the dirty laundry. It was the former government that was trying to stick the job, and they were saying, hey, we try not to bring this stuff out, but since you can do it, we can't do this because you did A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, we had to take this away and rethink it because you did this, and this. You didn't do anything in housing. You didn't do anything in education. You didn't do anything for people and with Dorian. When you did have your, they were talking about the food service that they were doing where they were trying to help people out. And then it was borne out, you deliberately didn't give certain people access to food or social services because you felt that they supported the other party or somebody else. So I, as a Bahamian, should starve because you think that I am green or yellow, but I'm not red. But you say you're yet to serve Bahamians. So I thought, I was like, oh, this is a little bit messy. I'm here for this.
Yeah, yeah. But that's is a good way to think about in terms of this topic and the role of the corporate secretary and making sure that the board does what it's supposed to do.
Agreed.
So in Parliament, that would actually be the Speaker of the House.
Right.
They're the ones who bring them back in line.
Her deputy speaker had the opportunity to chair part of it. He did a good job.
Okay.
But this is what, their second sitting so far. We waiting.
Yeah, we'll see.
We waiting.
Okay. So just like how a board, any other board in a company, that's the same way how we're using the analogy now with the House and the persons that are being appointed to the various committees. And when the actual Prime Minister and everybody meets on a Wednesday, it's just like the board coming to sit together.
Right.
And when you're on the board, there's the corporate secretary along with the chairman, they set the date for all of the meetings. So the dates are always already scheduled for the year. So there really shouldn't be any excuse why a director cannot be at a meeting unless, of course, there's been a death. Because those dates are already agreed to by November of the previous year.
Agreed.
Now, there are some instances, depends on what's happening in the company, that boards sometimes meet not every quarter, but some boards meet sometime monthly. And they do that because the company is in crisis. I'll give you a good example now. This is what, November.
Yes.
The next peak season will be Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then New Year's. I tried to book a flight to leave here December the 16th.
Good luck.
No.
Internationally? You're traveling internationally?
To Miami.
Okay. Yeah, that's international.
Bahamas.
Miami and the island.
You're right. Bahamas Air had the cheapest flight. $300 round trip, $287. But Bahamas Air says you have to pay for your bags.
Since
Each
when?
one. Yes.
Both? You don't have the option of the 50-pound.
No, you have to pay for your bags. Now, a colleague of mine told me she just came back from Miami last week. She went on a foreign airline from here to Miami, and they were allowing 2 free bags. She said she's never seen so many Bahamians in the airport. Everybody had 2 bags, 2 huge bags.
Of course.
So tell me why now our national air carrier, competitor on the ground, who is attracting more business than them. And then you wonder why they're not making money.
They're not making money because we talking about companies, bad management.
Yes.
So you have to pay for the bag because I have to revamp the money that was lost or stolen or this, that, and the next thing. And you the customer have to pay for it.
Exactly. Why
instead of you revamping the company in another way. Yes. I think Bahamas Air is very top heavy.
But that has always been said. And then they said we're going to do something about it. Why is there always a hesitation?
I have no idea. No idea. I think.
Let me go back. Let me go back.
They're very top heavy, and their salaries are top heavy. And even during the pandemic, they didn't downsize. They paid everybody. unlike a lot of private companies who took after about 6 or 9 months into COVID, they realized, hey, we can't bear this cost. So they went and they revamped the company. They looked at their numbers, they looked at what they could sustain and this, that, and next thing. And a lot of people were encouraged to take early retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially in law, clients don't pay you every day. And your clients, your money clients who could pay you, they weren't paying you because they was holding on to that money to make sure their investments in other places would be able to sustain their lifestyles and their businesses, so that nobody was paying. So you had to come with another way of doing your business. And the government and these ministries didn't find a way to do it.
Yeah. So even now, even though now at this peak season, Bahamas is not going to make any money.
Nope.
And it's sad.
And they killed Family Island people. Well, they killed traveling to the Family Island.
In some instances, they've outsourced it to the smaller airlines. That's what they do.
You know, Western and get you there, they can be on time. They may leave early, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, Flamingo Way can get you there. If you're going to one of them, the small keys, don't have a major runway, you know, they can get you there, and that's sad.
Yeah, but they have to make a decision and downscale it whereby it becomes profitable. But then again, that comes from the board. And so this time we have an accountant as the chairman, Kiki Baraka Sr.
All right. And what he can do?
I don't know, but he's an accountant. So I don't know if he knows anything about the airline industry, because it's not just about accounting figures. It's about running a business and running an airline business. And you have to know what direction to take that company in order to make a profit. So that means you have to look at your competitors and look globally. And I think they just work in a vacuum. Okay, it's board meeting, sit around the table. Okay, this is what was presented. And then they finish, they're done. No one
Eat
thinks
lunch.
eat lunch, yes.
To me.
No one thinks strategy.
Agreed.
It's just my. So as a company secretary, you have to look at the boardroom itself. You look at the frequency of the meeting. If the company is in problems, you have to have, like I say, people have, instead of quarterly meetings, suddenly they have monthly meetings so they can get the company on track. So when you look at the board, if you're having a board meeting in a room, because right now everything is done via Zoom. But if you weren't in this pandemic, you have to look at the seating, you have to look at the light, the air conditioning, you have to look at the visual aids. All of that has to be looked at in terms of making sure that the board is in comfort while it is deliberating and having discussions. You look at the plugs, the projectors, the lighting, whether or not there's enough sockets in the room. If you're going to use those directors' iPads, all of that you have to look at. But the room has to be conducive for a board meeting. The next key thing as a corporate secretary is this: you have to decide who sits where. And so when that board comes together, you direct them where to sit. And then from the first board meeting, you'll begin to see the dynamics of the board members. And you'll know for the second meeting whether or not you need to switch certain persons for that second meeting and going forward. So the preferred seating arrangements is always the chairman, and the deputy chairman should face each other at the ends of the table. The company secretary sits between the chairman and the finance director. And that's so that papers can be passed from the finance director to the company secretary to the chairman. The chairman always has his back to the window. And they should be opposite to the door so that they
Why?
can see persons coming in and out. We're just gonna say, Danielle,
No, it's Lisa, why?
why the chairman has his back to the window?
Yes,
Because he has to be able to see who's coming into the room.
okay.
So the table has to be positioned in that way. You can't have a person coming to the boardroom and the person's coming in with the chairman's back to the door. Because remember, at a board meeting now, you have the board of directors. There are certain members of different departments, sometimes who have to make a presentation. And it's the corporate secretary who advises the person, you're up next. Sometimes they're sitting outside the boardroom, or sometimes they tell them, you're number 6 on the agenda. I will send you a text when I'm ready for you. And so when the door opened, the chairman raises his head and he can see who is coming in. Or he'll turn to the corporate secretary. Corporate secretary may say, the manager is not in office today, or the manager had to leave on an emergency. So-and-so is making the presentation. So when the person opens the door, the chairman will say, well, welcome, Mr. Smith. Yeah, that's how it's done.
Understood.
So the chief executive or the managing director sits next to the chairman to emphasize unity. So it's always the chairman and then the chief executive. So if we learn, that would be the chairman on the board along with the permanent secretary. On the opposite side is the corporate secretary. To avoid the non-executive sitting as a group, they should sit on either side of the table. So some boards have more than one non-executive. And so they sit on opposite sides. For convenience, the sitting arrangement of the chairman, the deputy chairman, the chief executive, the finance director, and the company secretary should remain the same at each meeting, but others should change. But you'll find out that the others, once they're comfortable they're sitting, they sit in the same seat. If there is a board lunch, you should change their positions. So normally if you're having a regular board meeting and then you're having an EGM, in the middle, it depends if it's in the morning, then you would serve breakfast. And normally they change this. So once you're having a board meeting, the receive
Change since they ate.
when they're eating,
Yeah. Wow.
normally you
What's
you
that
know
about?
normally put persons who are more familiar or who are like friends. When is the board meeting is not about friendship. So when they're going to eat, normally friends.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then they go back to their seat.
Yes.
Weird. Okay.
So one of the problems we could be having at these government ministries is we need to, at least not problems, but what we need to ask ourselves is, are they receiving the right information to make decisions?
No,
And is the information in a form that they can digest it?
no.
Which means before a board meeting, you should have the documentation 2 weeks in advance so that the board of directors can actually digest it. They can ask the CEO or the managing director questions prior to the board meeting. Is the information they're receiving, is it accurate? Is it concise? And is it really looking at the company itself presently and in the future? And are they giving the directors enough information in order to actually engage in a debate or to make a decision? Now that part we don't know. So normally they say documents should be 1 week ahead, but I usually used to give the directors 2 weeks. So they have enough time to read and ask any questions prior to the board meeting.
And I like that they say in a form that they can digest, because one thing I learned is that you can't give them anything that's too long or too
Nope.
technical.
Correct. Correct. And that's what I was going to say to you too. When documents came to me to put on the board agenda, I always sent it back. Because I told him I'm a board. If I am a board of director right now and I'm reading this, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I know what you're talking about, but I'm putting on the head of a director now. What are you talking about? And what are you asking of me as a board of director? I said, I don't see this in this document. And I always tell them, if you're writing to the board, unless this is some long report that you had commissioned, and then you're attaching something to it, your request should only be 1 page. Your report based on the incident, should be more 2 pages, you get to the point.
We used to prepare summaries for board meetings and they would always get sent back. And my boss would always say, this is fine, now make it 1 page.
1 page,
I worked for a judge who told me that.
yes, 1 page. Now,
She wanted me to summarize a 500-page report.
yes, and 1
Said,
page.
I hate reading, this too long. My summary was 5 pages. She said this too long, put this in 1 page.
Mhm.
That was a learning experience for me.
Yes, and that's how it is, not just only in the legal practice, but in business. It has to be 1 page. What are you trying to tell me, and what do you want? That's it. And if I don't do it, what are my risks? Now, whichever department it is, of course, they will come armed with their full document. In the event that they may ask you a question that requires some detail, you should be prepared. But they don't need to see all of that information. So said report should be short and succinct with as much graphics as possible, with the real issues being made abundantly clear. Color coding is always useful, with the agenda 1 color and the finance report another color. Normally do the whole finance report, all the charts are normally done in color. In the format from meeting to meeting whilst avoiding confusion or generating suspicion can provoke a better understanding. Some boards use pre-board meetings for those not to speed up on a particular issue. So there are sometimes pre-board meetings, and you find out there's a lot, sometimes it's not a lot, but some companies do a lot of matters round robin, and that is not to be encouraged, because most items should actually be at the actual board meeting. So the regular items for a board meeting are an agenda, 1 page. If more than that, then 2 pages the most. Minutes from the last meeting, and the minutes should be short and concise. What exactly did the board approve? And if there were deliberations, you state the name of the director who raised the issue and you summarize the point. Management accounts and any other papers that are related to any specific agenda. So a good company secretary in preparing a board paper on a specific item will give useful advice on the format. So that's another role of the corporate secretary. Documents that are coming in from various departments, they would give advice. Typically, format is the purpose, the background, what's the issue, and what's the recommendation. Presentations by non-board members are in 2 categories, either to inform, present, or communicate, or you're seeking approval, or you want something to stimulate a debate. So a typical agenda. The company secretary would draft the agenda and send it to the chairman. And the company secretary, when they draft the agenda, is normally done in conjunction with the managing director or CEO. So once it's drafted, it goes to the chairman. Both of them together will decide how much time the board meeting is going to take. The chairman will look at the agenda and see what is a priority. And during the meeting, talking about strategy can be a lot more fun than ensuring the business is properly under control. So boards that spend too much time on strategy and not enough time on operational policies may become unstuck. So that's why the chairman himself have to be knowledgeable on the business of the company, because he has to look at strategy and operational policies. Spend too much time on strategy because that's why they have strategic meetings. He has supposed to be making sure that management is carrying out the strategy, and are we meeting the objectives, and are we on target for the income that we're looking for. At the same time, he has to make sure that the company is in compliance with all of his laws, is in compliance with all regulatory, and at the same time, also making sure that all operational policies have been prepared, reviewed, and approved. So it says it's an art for the chairman to strike a balance at board meetings. So, an agenda, approval of previous meetings, formal approval matter requiring limited discussion. Then you have executive reports, the chief executive, the finance director, any operational policy, strategic issues, and any other business. So an excellent chairman will minimize the time spent on subjects which can be dealt with by pre-reading and the committees of the board. An excellent chairman will ensure that people have pre-read and do understand what is being approved. So when you attend a board meeting, the chairman doesn't sit down and say, okay, item number 5, let me give you some time to read it. No. If it's a matter for approval, the chairman then says, this matter is up for approval. You as a director should have read it. And the company secretary is ready to take notes if there are any comments or objections raised. But in her draft minutes that she has prepared, she knows that item number 5 requires a resolution, and her resolution is already inserted in her minutes, in her draft minutes. So a good tip is to jot down on the agenda before the board meeting how long each agenda item should take. And then to write how long you expect it to take, and then to the right again, how long it did take. And that gives the corporate secretary an idea of when that matter comes up again or similar matter, how much time he or she needs to allow for discussion of that topic. The corporate secretary could also discuss this timing with the chairman, because the chairman may say, this matter doesn't need all of this time because he or she is going directly to the approval process. So if there is insufficient time being spent on strategic issues, you may wish to switch this with operational issues at the next meeting. So normally the chairman will say this meeting is only going to be an hour to an hour and a half. Or he may say it's going to be 2 hours or 2.5 hours based on the agenda and the items that they foresee will require some discussion. And then it's up for the corporate secretary sitting next to the chairman to direct, to say, this matter is going on too long. Should we wrap this up? Should we ask for the manager to represent this? They're the ones that guide the chairman in carrying out and executing the meeting. You may also wish to shorten the executive report. some chairmen actually place in brackets the time allotted for each item on the agenda. In large companies, the agenda is split in two. The first part is the summary agenda, and these are for items that require no approval. And then the second one is the discussion agenda. And they find that having a meeting like this is highly effective. So instead of having a board meeting for 4 hours and 4.5 hours, the board meeting can actually be held in an hour and 15 minutes. Any comments?
I noticed there's no section for previous business.
Okay,
Things that may have been, that come up at the previous board meeting that needed resolution, but people had to go away and then come back.
I know,
I've sat on a committee once where that was a standing item and it would happen at the beginning.
right. So look at my agenda, I have approval of previous minutes and matters arising. That's matters arising.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there. Now, normally, now another thing, a good secretary, you know what a good secretary does? Corporate secretary, good corporate secretary after the meeting would send around the items that have to be answered to for the next meeting. And that corporate secretary would make sure that they're all answered before the next meeting. And so
I once introduced, I used to call it the action list. I once introduced an action list and the chairman was resistant to it. They
why?
didn't want an action list. I don't know. I think they used to like when things didn't get done and then they could berate the subordinates when they came to the next meeting and the items weren't done. So I stopped taking it. And then at the next meeting, they asked me for the action list. And then I got berated for no action list.
Oh, okay. Because normally you go over the matters arising or action lists, and the chairman is then advised by the corporate secretary as to whether or not the responses are included in the agenda already. Because sometimes depends on what the action is, and may require that manager to go out and do a lot of work, and then it becomes an actual action item. And so the corporate secretary would advise the chairman, these are action items, and only these number 2, 5, and 7 can be discussed on the matters arising. All the rest are substantive matters now. That's all you need to do. So like I say, the chairman and the company secretary, they set the board agenda. The company secretary will focus on the legal and the compliance issue, and the chairman on everything else. Board members may submit items to either the chairman or company secretary. So sometimes if there are questions when they receive the board agenda and supporting documents, sometimes the board members would reach out to the corporate secretary. The chief executive managing director will have significant input and they will shape the chairman thinking. So that's why the CEO or the managing director sits at the left of the chairman, because remember that it's a united front. Is usually anything for which a board review or approval is essential that can't wait until the next scheduled meeting. It usually arises after the board papers are dispatched to the board members. So you send out the agenda, you send out the board package, and something else comes up that is not on the agenda, you put it under any other business. Board members don't like items, like a really substantive item, being placed under any other business. That's when you get rolled over the coal, because they're going to say that if this is a substantive matter, why was it not ready in time to meet the board package and the agenda? But the chairman decides whether there is any item to be put under any other business. So preparing a board calendar, ensure there are specific items are discussed at the appropriate time, provide time for sufficient preparatory work to be performed, and make sure the less interesting routing but essential items are not forgotten about. Remove clutter and avoid repetition of discussion. So an efficient secretary will plan the calendar 2 years in advance, which balances rigor and flexibility as the calendar is considered to be a plan. It is a shared responsibility between the chairman and the company secretary to manage a board meeting. The company secretary focuses on detailed preparations, corporate governance, compliance issues, and minutes. The chairman concentrates on the conduct of the meeting itself. So the role of the chairman to organize the composition, the business, and efficiency of the board. They are to lead the board in the determination of its strategy and the achievement of its objectives. They ensure that the board has accurate and clear visibility of results achieved and likely future trends. They ensure that board committees are properly established, composed, and operated. They ensure effective relationships are maintained with all major stakeholders. They enhance the company's public standing and image overall. And they develop a strong working relationship with the managing director or the CEO and ensure there's a clear definition and agreement on the division of responsibility. A chairman has to command respect through formal achievements. A clear mind and considerable determination matched with a keen sensitivity and openness to the ideas of others. And they should regularly think about the process of their board and its composition. And so you see that being a chairman is a very difficult role to play. And that is why I keep saying that if you're going to be chairman or on a particular board, you have to know the business of the company. Because it says it has to ensure that board committees are properly established, composed, and operated. And they have to make sure that the relationships are maintained with all major stakeholders. So if you're joining a board and you're not familiar with how it operates, then it's key that you learn the business. The role of the managing director, the CEO, is that they allow the executive to join the debate. So it's natural for the chairman and the CEO to plan how involved the CEO will be in setting the agenda. The chairman should leave the setting of the agenda to the CEO. And the CEO should view the board meeting as an opportunity, as they should seek to have a better decision and interesting angle to support items tabled at the board meeting. So that means that the CEO or the managing director and the chairman should have a good working relationship. They have to speak to each other. The finance director, that's also a key position, or the CFO, they supply most of the information to the board and has the most matters to be followed. So that's why I was saying that for Bahamas Air, maybe the position of Mr. Kiki Varakas as being the chairman of the board may be critical in terms of seeing the figures and where Bahamas Air is actually generating its income, and also probably reviewing the expenses. But in order to achieve what we, the Bahamian people, is looking for, is they must have a strategy in order to grow the business and reduce the costs. So the finance director supports the CEO, and they should have a high caliber, be of a high caliber and high integrity. So they're looking at financial controls and systems are effective. The resources are appropriate to meet the company's short-term and long-term needs. The board is made fully aware of the company's financial position and performance, and it has a good visibility of future financial performance. The company has good relationship with providers of finance, and the financial team is appropriate and highly motivated. Nothing is worse than having underneath your watch, if you're a CFO, to find that your staff has been embezzling funds. Because that means that you don't have the proper controls in place.
What happens when they know that the staff is embezzling funds or stealing and they're not doing anything about it?
Then they should be fired. They should be fired. Because they realize now when the board meets, one of the most, I guess, the most critical information is the information from the finance committee, because that tells you whether or not your business is making money or not.
Get it?
Yeah, so integrity,
I think,
And- maybe Kiki Baracus may be a good person for Bahamas Air. Because it's obvious someone can't read the numbers.
I think Bahamian society is too
To what?
complacent in that area.
Yeah,
We are quick to condemn somebody who allegedly stabs somebody or who allegedly cheats on their wife or who allegedly is a womanizer or has children out of marriage. But the biggest crimes happen in blue collar situations because a government or a company doesn't want to be embarrassed. And that's the problem I think we have.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you see a little bit of the blue collar coming out now. I think one this year, the realtor was been stealing a lot of money from women. I think he was a contractor.
Contractor.
Yes. And then you see the Securities Commission doesn't have any problem with bringing actions against persons for fraud. And now you see the banks are actually bringing employees forward for theft. So it's coming out, but it's slow. Because companies don't want that reputation risk. So they prefer to just let you quietly go. But they don't know that it perpetuates that crime because they get better and better at it.
Exactly.
And that's what we try to stop. So the role of a company secretary is not clearly defined. Sometimes it really is blurred. And it varies from company to company. At times it includes all the things that the finance director does not want to do. So it becomes like a catch-all position. Whilst the role of a company secretary may include some administrative tasks, it is primarily a legal and or senior managerial executive role. And it depends upon the responsibilities given to the role and the nature and complexity of the organization. Generally, the company secretary provides advice and guidance to directors on their obligations under company law and other relevant laws and regulations. And of course, the company's articles of association. Many of them have branched out into risk management as they deal with more administrative duties. Because remember now, even though each department will write their own report for the board meeting, the company secretary reviews all of those documents. And they're the ones who would probably tell the manager, I don't think you should include this. We discussed this before. Or this is a point that a particular director is looking for. You may need to expand this a little bit more. Or this didn't really address the point that was raised at the last meeting when I read what you have presented. So that's why they say that the company secretary, its role is administrative. It is also legal. It is an executive role, but you wear lots of different hats. Some company secretaries say that their role is, quote, to make the process as smooth as possible for the directors and to be their independent conscience. Company secretaries normally ensure that dividends are paid to shareholders, company records are properly and accurately maintained, and shareholders are appropriately informed and notified of meetings and corporate affairs. So before the meeting, what does a company secretary have to do?
A lot.
They have to know. Go ahead. Go ahead, Danielle.
Or
I think that's Lisa.
That was Lisa. Oh, I still have my phone on something else. Go this way. All right. Lisa, what you going to say?
you said that the role is not clearly defined.
No.
So it appears to me that the corporate secretary has a leadership role in terms of setting the tone for how meetings are run and in advising the board on creating sort of an environment for the company
Yes.
and how she steers the board or
Mhm.
he or she steers the board.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But that's a lot of work because you're preparing a lot of stuff. You're preparing agendas. You have to be adept at what's going on outside of the company and in the industry.
Yes.
And then you have to keep adults in line to say, hey, here, read this in advance.
Yes. You do in addition.
I know, yeah, other job.
Yes. Because as far as the organization see, this meeting comes up once a month. So in their mind, nothing really to do. But if you don't understand the role, then you don't know what is involved. That's why I use a good perspective than 2 weeks before the board meeting. There's a lot of interaction with the CEO and making sure is the right information at the right time. So when you're reading it, and then you say, I remember management of loss, which is above the limit. Why is that included in here? I have to be the one as a corporate secretary to go to the department and say, report is not accurate. Propaganda and then circulate it with the doc, and you're responsible for hiring. So that's booking the conference room, making sure that refreshments are ready. You have to actually know what the directors like to eat and drink. Making sure there's a clock in the room, there's a bar in it. Organized.
I laugh because you said making sure there's a clock in the room with a battery in it.
Yes. Because let's say everybody's looking at the clock. Oh, what time is it? And they look up and your clock says 10 o'clock, no battery in it, and it's 12.
That's funny.
Okay. I have
Also,
your
if
notice.
there's any electronics that you need, presentations, your slide, your projector working, or your TV that you go and hook up the laptops to working as well. If there's anybody that's phoning in, that they have the dial-in information and that they can enter the meeting, you know, they can hear, all of those things.
All of that. Making sure the right chairs are in the room, because you know sometimes other people use the conference room. So if they make sure the right chairs are there, the placemats or they use to put their pads on, that's there, that the desk is being polished, all of that. You have to make sure the room is fresh, the plant has been brushed off, everything. You can prepare a briefing note for the chairman before each meeting, 2 pages and bullet point. For formal resolutions, these should be prepared in minute form to avoid a separate detailed agenda. On the day of the meeting, again, all items are covered, all papers are being available. And to ensure any documents which might be referred to are at hand, accounts and your memo and articles if you need them. During the meeting, be prepared to resist the temptation to speak on anything other than procedural matters. So that means that your lips are closed. The company secretary should not be part of the discussion unless it's a procedural matter. You have to record the names of the directors present and then those who arrive or depart during the meeting. You check that a quorum is present and maintained. And if one or more of the directors has an interest in an agenda, to check that an independent, disinterested quorum is available. Report any apologies for absence and note them for recording in the minutes. And during the meeting, you could take notes of the proceedings and of the instructions given and decisions arrived at. You prepare to advise on any point of procedure without invitation on request to inform the chairman if any action proposed to be taken by the board is unlawful or contrary to the memo and arts or the trustee. It depends on the board. To make the precise arrangements for entry for those attendees only present for part of the meeting. Remember, I told you that you normally have managers make a presentation. And to ensure the removal of any confidential reports or letters from the boardroom. So that's at the end. After the meeting, you make whatever appropriate notifications to any regulators, any regulatory, notify any department or individuals of any decisions that affects them. You send out an email. You note any items that were deferred, and you go back to that department and advise them that the matter was deferred and why. And of course, you prepare and circulate the draft minutes to the board members, and then you issue the final approved minutes afterwards. So normally for the draft minutes, how much time you normally give? Because the draft minutes used to be prepared, I'll tell you, from the Swiss side, it was 2 days. They wanted the minutes in 2 days.
Prior to the meeting?
No,
After the
after the
meeting. I used to give myself a week because after that you begin to forget
yes.
some of the details of what is to discuss was discussed. And you try and write down as much as you can and prepare the minutes as close as you can to the end of the meeting.
Mhm.
But I try and give myself a week because then once it's prepared, I have to send it up to the actual secretary to review and they'll have a look at it. And from their memory as well as their meetings, they might make them in their notes, they might make adjustments.
Mhm.
And then we send out the final version once we agree on it and proofread it and those things. So by the end of the second week, it's done because the board meetings.
Oh, okay. We had to do ours in 2 days. Very quick. Whereas for the Canadians, it was 2 weeks. 2 weeks it had to be done. So for the minutes, it's usually a dilemma as to whether to record a summary of the discussion and the debate or just the decisions taken by the directors.
One
So the-
question on the minutes. We're
Go
now in
ahead.
the modern age. We're now in the modern age, so the meeting can't be recorded. If
Yeah.
if the memo went out because
What do you mean recorded without writing minutes?
yes, like a transcript. Like, you know, in court, you have a transcript, you have a stenographer who keeps the minutes, or
No, I don't. I'm not aware of them doing it like that. It is recorded.
I'm just asking. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's recorded, but I mean, an audio recording of the minutes, and then that becomes the transcript of the minute of the meeting.
Oh, no, I'm not aware of that one.
I just asked. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that works because then you're just trying to record the actions of the company. Then you end up with a lot of things that people don't need to, that you may not want to be recorded in the minutes in that detail for various reasons. You may just want the resolution recorded, as well as, pick this up later on. And so if there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't need to be read, then it makes it difficult to follow what has happened. I found sometimes even recording the minutes, recording the meeting hampers you from doing the minutes because you fill in there things that don't need to be there, and then your minute and record the salient details and then reproduce them in the minutes. When I first started, my minutes used to be super long and they used to get sent back all the time because I was recording a meeting and spending hours listening to the recording so I could record down the details. When I stopped doing that, my minutes became better, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it makes,
Or if that is,
no, it's on. And I end up writing like minutes 15, 16, 20 pages long. And the chairman said, nope, too long. I want it short, to the point. And so I understand. But yeah, it's still, you could record it, but no, they still want the minutes typed.
I understand.
Yeah, I don't know. Because don't forget now, when the regulators come, they ask for the minute book.
Okay.
And they want to be able to go through the minutes and see where the discussions that were held and the contribution made by the independent directors. So in this point now with writing the minutes, it tells you that writing the minutes is an art form. And it has to be written to avoid different interpretations. So whether the assistant secretary or the actual secretary writes it, when you read it or you're proofing it before it goes to the chairman, you always have to make sure that nothing is written in a way that can be misinterpreted or has more than one meaning. So some chairmen take a formal and informal approach to reviewing the board. The informal review is having lunch with a board member where the chairman gives their feedback. The negative feedback is given in a coded language. With the formal review, it is more bureaucratic and it may involve costs and may not address the real issues. So the chairman should review people, purpose, and the process of the board. The chairman should subject himself to feedback as the rest of the board. And the chairman can decide if he prefers conversation or questionnaire. So being on a board doesn't mean that you just attend the board meetings. You also have to have feedback from the chairman. The chairman should be able to sit down and discuss with you your deliberations, your punctuality, your contribution to the board. So in the Higgs report, which is a corporate governance report, it recommends that the board reviews the performance evaluation of the board, its committees, and its individual directors at least once a year. The chairman should act on the results of the evaluation by recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of the board, and where appropriate, appoint new members and seek the resignation of those who are no longer suitable. So it's not someone who stays on a board stays forever. Every year, the chairman should do an evaluation. So the evaluation is not just looking at what you contributed, but looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the board. Do we have the right people to carry out the strategy that we're aiming for this year or next year? They also look at the qualifications of the persons on the board. They look at their years, how old they are, and see whether or not they have the right mix. And board should state in the annual report whether such performance evaluation is taking place and how it is conducted. So as a company secretary, there are some core competencies you should have. One is a thorough understanding of the company's business, and of course, the legal and regulatory risks and corporate governance responsibilities of the company. They should have a basic knowledge of company law, practice, and procedure. They should be able to read well and understand a company's financial statement. They should speak well and have good communication skills in terms of writing. They have to be detail-oriented, good mediation, a team builder, and a consensus building skills. They have the ability to think critically and laterally and overcome bureaucratic thinking, particularly amongst board members. As a corporate secretary, you should be flexible, and you also have to be creative, and you must have strong leadership ability. So some of the duties and responsibilities of a company secretary is, of course, you have to maintain the statutory documents and the corporate seal of the company, where there's a seal. Ensure that statutory filings are done. You also have to give advice and guidance to the directors. They're obligated to company law and other law. They're give advice on the articles of association and direct them. They should company secretary usually in meetings and corporate affairs. The board committee meetings assist with the drafting of the agenda, the minutes and resolutions. Normally, the corporate secretary is also the secretary for committee meetings. So that corporate secretary would arrange all of the committee meetings and take the minutes and prepare the agenda. The corporate secretary also fixes the company seal and co-sign where authorized by the directors of the company. They act as a confidant and advisor to the executive and non-executive directors. They ensure the company holds its AGM within the specified time limits. They organize and administer board meetings, shareholders meetings, making sure that the relevant notifications are sent out. They prepare the agenda, and of course, they prepare the minutes. They communicate the outcome of all board deliberations or decisions throughout the organizations. So there are some legal considerations to a company secretary. They owe the company a duty of skill and care and diligence in carrying out their role and responsibilities, and they can be liable for negligence for failing to exercise the necessary standard. They are the de facto legal and compliance officer. So sometimes you see the company secretary will also be the legal and compliance officer. They do the two roles together. And they should procedurally ensure, along with the chairman, that the board and other company meetings are conducted in a proper manner. And of course, procedural propriety is important to ensure that the validity of the meetings and the resolutions passed cannot be questioned. So as a corporate secretary, you should know about company shares, the different types of shares, ordinary shares, deferred shares, preferred shares, cumulative shares, preferred cumulative shares. You have to know all of the shares. You have to know the share capital of the company and the share issue. You should know the share register because you keep the share register. You're responsible for the shares because you have a resolutions binder. Of course, you're responsible for the record keeping of the proxy. The financial statements provide an overview of the company's financial condition in the short and long term. So you should be able to read a balance sheet. You should be able to read an income statement, a cash flow statement, and the retained earnings statement. All of those as a company secretary, you should be able to read and have some idea of it. So Danielle and Lisa, you familiar with, you have some knowledge of reading financial statements, correct?
Yes.
Good. Because that's one of the things that you should have, because you have some people who take the role as a corporate sector financial statement. And so, once there's a board meeting, after you've done the minutes, the matters arising, of course, the first thing you're going to talk about is the financial position of the company. And of course, there are different types of minutes. You have the director's minutes, you have the shareholders' minutes, and then you have the general minutes. So as a corporate secretary, you have to take the minutes of the shareholders meeting, the minutes of the board of directors, and the minutes of all of the subcommittees. And that role, like I said, is a role that is joined with another responsibility. So you could either be the legal officer along with corporate secretary, or you could be the compliance and legal officer and corporate secretary. Because all the matters go together.
One thing I noticed, one thing that isn't here is the budget. You should probably be able to read and understand the budget as well.
Yes.
The document, yeah.
Mhm. No, but that's why I was saying, that's why the role is a complex one, because whatever is on the agenda, the corporate secretary's role is to read it and make sure that it addresses what the chairman and the board is looking for. So you have to know a little bit about risk. You have to know about budgets. You have to know about finance. You have to know about compliance. And so it depends on the nature of your business. If we're talking about Bahamas Air and you're the corporate secretary, you should have an idea of what is happening out there in that industry, regionally, domestically, and internationally. Because when those reports are prepared by your managers and they're coming to go to the board, you read it to see if it makes sense. And that's why you're the person that give advice to the board. And you will find that managers and CEO would also come for advice, because they're going to say, oh, the board asked me to prepare this report, but I'm not really understanding based upon what I'm doing. What were they really looking for? And the company secretary then guides that manager to try to get the accurate information that the board is looking for. Now, I don't know for the government boards who acts as the corporate secretary. I'm not aware of who does that. I know like for the central bank, the corporate secretary would have been the legal counsel. Now, I don't know how it works at the other government ministries. Maybe it's the legal person who is the corporate secretary. Any comments? No comments?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, that's it for us. Who's coming out to the function tonight? So I could look for you. At 6 o'clock, breezes.
I'm
Nope.
coming.
Lisa's coming. Okay, who else?
Danielle can't come. Danielle on baby duty.
Yeah, I know she's on baby duty, and this ain't no weather to take no baby out.
How young is this baby? Because I'm babysitting too, and my niece is coming. Luckily, she's a preteen, so she could take some.
She's a month old.
Oh,
1 month, just born.
no, you can't bring the baby.
She can't bring the baby. She shouldn't be out in this weather either.
Yeah.
This is not weather for you to come out. You need to stay home. Okay, so I'll look for you, Lisa.
Yes. I'm bringing my niece Kian. I'm trying to encourage her to study and focus in school.
Okay, all right. Okay. I look forward to meeting her too.
Good.
Anybody else coming out? Don't sound so Raven, you coming out?
I'm
I
coming,
think
but I
so if I ever settle.
If you have a sitter, call a niece
Yeah.
or nephew. It's normally not too long. It's not long. And we try to start on time. So
So
it
by
should be quick.
by 7:30, you're saying it should be done.
Yeah, people normally hang around afterwards, but it's not that long.
I get tired of people on the weekends. I have to talk all week.
Ms. Archer, was he supposed to get confirmation for payment or how does it work? You have to show anything to enter?
If you bought your tickets,
My work just told me they paid, but I didn't receive any email, like nothing like that.
oh, well, when once you get there, you just tell, it'll either be Miss Johnson or one of those at the door. Just give them the name of your company and just told them that they paid, they'll make a note.
Okay,
Yeah, if your company paid, then they should have it recorded somewhere. Just
Okay.
come back out.
you can, so you can always pay as well, and let's just say there was a hiccup. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be, turnaround situation. Okay,
Your company say they paid, they'll make a note and then
follow up.
but if
Mhm.
Friday, follow up on it. If not, then they will call you and tell you what it's for. Don't worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I gave you enough time now to get ready.
But go get your hairs done. Let me stop lying.
No? All right, so see you all tonight for those who are coming, okay?
All
Have a
right, see
good
you
evening,
later.
everybody.
So have a
I'm
good
sorry I
weekend.
talked so much. I had a wired week.
No,
Be
no, no,
safe.
no, it's fine.
Weren't we supposed to talk exam today?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
we were.
weren't we?
I don't recall, but I'm figuring that unit 8 is definitely going to be on final exam.
Of course, you know that.
So then that's next class then, you would tell us.
Yes, next class then.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, ladies.
okay, all right.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy your
Have a
weekend.
good evening.
Have a good
Yes.
evening, everybody.
Yeah, okay, bye-bye.
Bye.